Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. John Hood, what do you wish you had said on last week's show, but you didn't?
Tom, we talked about the absentee ballots and the early voting. We have some data. We don't have a lot of data yet, but we're trying to draw conclusions, and I was urging us to be skeptical about that. One of the reasons is that if you look into the political science literature about early voting, people's assumption is early voting increases overall voter participation. It's a plausible interpretation, but there's not a lot of evidence for it. There are quite a few studies that show that it has no effect on turnout, that it even slightly decreases turnout. How could that possibly be? Well, it is certainly more convenient. People like early voting. I think, by the way, that's why we ought to provide it, because it is a convenience and people appreciate the opportunity. But obviously a vote is a vote. Just because you vote 2 weeks early doesn't change how much value it is. And what happens when you spread voting over many days, rather than a sort of a steep crescendo to Election Day, is that you somewhat water down the sense of immediacy. So on the one hand, you give people more options, so if they're going to be gone on Election Day, they can vote a different day. In theory, that should increase turnout. There is some countervailing depression of sort of voter interest because it happens over weeks rather than one at a time.
With that theory, the fact that we have 18 early voting days today compared to only 10, I think, in 2014, is that going to affect turnout, you think?
I don't know that it will, but I liked the 10 because it was more concentrated. In other words, it gave people more convenience, but it didn't have quite as much of a risk of sort of diluting and watering out. And there's also a little bit of a danger. The earlier you start early voting, the more possible it is for things to happen after you cast your ballot that would have changed your opinion.
Yes.
And so, now, one thing I will say, it's pretty much unambiguously true that mail-in voting does increase turnout.
Yeah,
and that's different.
They're allowing mail-in absentee ballots to be sent and received. October 30th is the deadline on that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've had absentee ballots by mail for a long time. I'm just saying there is evidence to suggest that if you can vote at home, from home, instead of going to a polling place whenever, that does somewhat increase turnout.
But you don't have to have any voter identification whatsoever.
Well, there are some standards involved here, and I would like to tighten them for absentee ballots, but you can't just fill out a form and turn it in. There are some standards involved.
Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.